we're getting our camper ready for the season right now. And I got a honey-do list on my mobile vacation home that I've got to check off, right? So Sunday is a really convenient time to do that.
Right.
So is painting the camper a violation of the Sabbath day?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess that kind of depends.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Can I paint the camper and be in almost the meditative state of how you get into when you're painting and be with Jesus?
Yeah.
It's really, there's a lot of gray in there when it comes to the Sabbath.
With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast.
Welcome.
This is going to be an episode.
It's going to be fun.
Because SJ's got an attitude today. I'm not even going to talk about it.
I couldn't get the stupid printer. Remember, oh gosh, what was that movie? Office Space. PC load letter. What the heck does that mean? They beat it up with a baseball bat. Anyway.
Oh, man. So
welcome.
Yeah, welcome. And I hope your day's going a little better than SJ's. But if that's the worst of our really
challenges,
right?
Come on, man.
So we're gonna do a 2-part series. This is part 1, and we're just talking about some of the rhythms of life. What are some of the rhythms with Jesus? What are some of our rhythms with each other in Brotherhood? And what does that look like? What are the things that when we think of rhythms, right? There's a beat, a motion, and I think in we have to figure out a way to show this, Andy, but I feel like when I think of the rhythms of my life, SJ, with God and with relationships, it's kind of so if a line is, the linear timeline is moving, it's moving like this. But I think when you start to talk about the rhythms, you're in a loop, and the loop is moving, right? It'd be like a carousel, but it's moving.
Like the video I think I shared with you, the solar system moving through space.
Did you share that with me?
I did.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
We've shared that at events. That if you learned about the solar system from a
usually look at it as like a
flat,
top-down flat. Yeah.
That was,
But it's actually corkscrewing through space. Yeah.
What's beautiful about even bringing that up is there's a way things work.
Right.
There's a way things work. Have you ever seen, and I know you have. I've been like somebody who doesn't have rhythm and worship songs or
Steve Martin
or somebody who just can't clap along with the beat.
Do you remember that clip?
Yes.
Steve Martin. Okay.
So,
but if they're out of rhythm, it does what?
Yeah, it throws everything off and is annoying to anybody around them.
Feel bad for those guys.
Yeah,
though,
it's okay if you can't sing, but if you can't clap, don't.
Yeah.
Don't. You're
just throwing everybody off.
Now that we're regressing into all kinds of things, but it reminds me of, and I think this is appropriate. The Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah.
You're throwing off your groove.
Yeah.
And so, what is your groove in terms of the things that bring with them and the practicing of them, right? Bring good fruit.
Yeah.
Produce the things that are good. And there's a real invitation for us to exercise our will. For instance, we're in the middle of, we just hit Ash Wednesday.
Right.
And here comes this season of Lent, and what a great thing to just lean in and make a willful decision that for my rhythm, for the rhythm of my life, I'm going to abstain from this, or I'm going to give up this or that, whatever it is. So I think this is...
Or engage in a new rhythm, a new pattern of behavior,
getting up
Sherry,
earlier.
Sherry and I are watching...
Going to bed earlier.
We started The Chosen over again at the beginning of on Ash Wednesday. We started that.
That's a great...
And we're going to go through it all the way through to Easter. So, yeah. And I think, too, it's important to say, Michael, we're recording this a couple of weeks before the Encounter weekend in 2025, but this is going to drop. These episodes are going to come out right after the Encounter.
I see what you're doing there.
Yeah. So the idea being, like, here's a couple hundred guys who are maybe just being introduced to this message. How does this look in our day-to-day life?
We'll talk about the context in light of some of that experience, because that's really important. So we'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast.
Every great adventure starts with preparation, a place to gather, rest, and equip ourselves for the journey ahead. In the same way, Zoe's Base Camp is here for you, an online resource library created to encourage and strengthen Zoe allies on the road to deeper connection, healing, and restoration. A base camp is a staging ground, a place to prepare for the next leg of your expedition. At Zoe, Base Camp is a resource library designed to help you and our allies gear up for the journey of the heart. It is packed with devotionals, discussion guides, and podcasts to help you deepen your relationship with God and one another. When you visit Base Camp, you'll find a growing collection of resources, each crafted to guide you and the men in your circles on your walk with God. Each series that you find below includes a devotion plan with supplemental video content from the Explore More podcast. The devotionals are designed for both personal reflection and small group discussions, helping you dig deeper into God's truth while building meaningful relationships. On the Base Camp website, you will see the various series that we have available. When you click on a series, you'll have the opportunity to download the PDF devotion plan and the discussion guide questions. This also includes an invitation to reflect in time alone with God. Share the plan with your small group and send out the podcast videos for members to watch on their own time. Then, when you gather, dive into conversations about what God is revealing to each of you. Base Camp is more than a resource library. It's a tool for building redemptive brotherhood on the road to experiencing more life, more love, and freedom with God. Start your journey today, explore Base Camp, and reach out to us at allies@zoe.org if you have any further questions.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast. During the break, I wonder who Exploring More podcast is part of their rhythm. And I have a nomination of we know.
I know a couple guys.
I know.
Yeah.
Where we hear from people either email or texting because we're connected to them in that way. Like our shout out to Sean Harmon. I mean, just, when Sean has watched, listened to one of the Exploring More podcasts because it's part of his rhythm, because every week we hear the encouragement of our friend, keep going. Love that. Love when you were on this, and then even how that's impacted him. So I love that that's a part of his rhythm.
Yeah, he was pretty deeply impacted by the shame series that we did, and just our recognition that it can be like a virus. Yeah, really rang true for him.
And as were we impacted, as I texted him. That was a really important series. And so before the break, you mentioned being mindful that here's an event that 400 guys went to, and it is a way that we live back on this linear, like, what next? Yeah.
Or how do I take this home?
Yeah. Or what do I do?
Yeah.
With this?
Yeah.
And I fair questions. And so this we're going to focus a little bit on kind of the rhythms of walking with Jesus, and the lots of things that we have organized here. But the one, SJ, that comes to me that we share even at the event is just to stay in it, review your notes. You know, men that I think men that can reflect on and are creating the space and the time to reflect on a day or a period of time, those are the men who I believe are kind of going after whatever is deeper, whatever is more in that moment. And because of that practice, they will see more.
Yeah.
They will feel more, and they will know more because of the reflection.
There's so many parallels that we could draw, so many metaphors we could use. But man, this is a nuanced practice. And like anything else, you want to talk about basketball, you want to talk about any number of things that I've engaged in my life. You know, when you start, it's like, this is a ball.
Yeah,
put it in the net.
The fundamentals of it all.
I mean, football. Matriculate it down the field, right? But it's way more nuanced than that. And so, but you got to start with, this is a football, right? And just engage in the practice. And the more that you engage in the practice, the more the nuance makes itself known and it appears to you. So this idea of reflection, I love it, because we are so bombarded with information, and here's trying to just pour into us all the time, whether it's through a phone or through ad media, however it comes in. We're trying more new information, and the discipline of pausing and reflecting on a moment, something you heard in one of the sessions at the weekend, on the podcast, whatever it might have been. It's a nuanced art, man. It really is. And God reveals tons in the midst of that reflection.
The idea, I agree with all that. The idea that you need to know a lot about a lot of things is kind of part of the cultural message. I was talking with my youngest daughter, Abby. We're Lions fans together.
Yeah.
And she was telling me about, several things that the Detroit Lions are kind of looking at off season. And I felt like, wait, I am way behind.
Yeah.
And I've got
She's like in the front office of the Lions now.
And she might have just looked at it
Did you read what the general manager did yesterday? No, I didn't.
You can feel the pressure of that politically.
Oh, yeah.
So back to the amount of content, the amount of information, and the pull of you have to stay current is I think quite the antithesis of kind of how the kingdom works. It's not, keep moving. It's going deeper.
Stay rooted.
And deeper and reflecting on that. So this one word that we're about to hit, I think really is a good one. So if we're going to move in the rhythms of walking with Jesus, I really like this idea of then we're going to become that's the way that you become apprentice of Jesus. And I love that word, apprentice. Used it a lot in King Me. It was something in my own story that I felt like, learning the ways of the kingdom from the king is an apprenticeship.
The master.
Yes. Yeah. And I like, not that I'm trying to change our scriptures. I get it. There's this master-servant relationship, but you're talking about a master and an apprentice. This teacher and his disciples learning how to walk like he walked. And so therefore, we see Jesus doing, and I think you're going to, if you're starting over with the Chosen
definition,
if you're going to see it in the Chosen again, you'll see him. He leans in. He is on mission, and then he just kind of shuts the day down. Like, I'm rest and getting away and
so
enjoying the walk and the conversations that he's having with his disciples. And I think that's one of the things that I struggle at times in my apprenticeship is, like, literally, when was the last time it was okay to do nothing?
You mean be still?
It's just not rewarded. It's not acknowledged. It's not okay to not be wiping something up, putting something up, getting something down.
Oh, and the worst is when you're incapacitated.
Answering your the summoning of your phone. And I think, again, in this antithesis thing, the productivity is so much more rewarded than solitude and quiet and reflection. I mean, we are amped up, ramped up, and I'm not talking about caffeine. I'm just talking about the pace of it all. And so we've talked about 3 mile per hour God. We've talked about slowing down. And I think that if you want to walk with Jesus, it's a walk. There's a reality to it. It is a stroll. It's a very, very it's a dialed down pace, and I think even quiet times for me, I don't like that term anymore, but that's my own business and my own challenge because of it became religious. And it became a recipe for spiritual success, for faith success, for actually keeping God more. The belief was, well, he won't, if I do this, I'll show him and prove to him that I'm serious about this.
Yeah. And then you can share with others that you had something happen during my everyday quiet time this morning and get a little affirmation there too. And yeah, man.
Oh, it's sounds
insidious.
Very spiritual and very mature.
Yeah.
So
insidious how the enemy can move into spaces like that. It's interesting too. You may or may not remember, because it's been a couple of years since you watched season 1, episode 1 of The Chosen, perhaps.
Yeah.
It literally starts with families talking about and quoting the Old Testament and resting on the Sabbath day. That's how the whole series starts, is with rest.
Yeah.
And the importance of it, and
the prayer, right? Shabbat.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So interesting that they chose to start it that way.
Yeah.
And then what I noticed too, we've only gotten 2 episodes in so far, and I think we made it through season 3, maybe into season 4 before we kind of had tapered off the last time. So we're going to go all the way. And then season 5 comes out just in time for Easter this year.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay.
It'll be interesting. But Jesus is rarely in a hurry, but when he is, you notice that. Like when he is directly going somewhere, like he's on his way, right, to Lazarus, or he's on his way here, he's on his way there, he often still gets interrupted. More often, he's just kind of making his way and moving through things and moving around people. So it's interesting how there's a contrast in our lives, that it's more notable when we're resting or not doing anything because we're in just a hurry all the time.
Right. Oh, it's a maybe it's part of the fallenness that, when we're going to have to sweat and work. I mean, yes, we embrace some of that. We should. There's part of that in that's needed to provide, but to find our value, identity, and worth in it, I think these are the things that are set against me when it comes to this topic of rhythm and practice with Jesus. So,
oh man.
So let me finish this one thought.
Finish it.
So I remember learning about 15 years ago about soaking prayer.
Yeah.
So to spend 5 or 10 minutes, kind of in stillness and in quiet, and even kind of turn the lights down, maybe light a candle. I mean, bro, there was one or two things that were going to happen when I was first learning to practice that kind of being in his presence. Now, we're always in his presence. I mean, that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about me kind of aligning and dialing in
focusing
to that, trying to focus. So one or two things was going to happen. One, I'm either going to fall asleep. I mean, I can, you let me put my head back at 6:30, even 7.
Oh yeah, and
there's a shot clock going on.
Quiet music playing,
and it can be and so that happened a bit early. So, and then comes the criticism of I'm not doing this well. I'm not very spiritual. But there's certain postures even that when my body's in a prone position, it's like, okay, I guess we're taking a nap.
Yeah.
Just kind of takes over. But the other part that if it wasn't that, it was just distraction. And
what's in front of you
and
for the rest of
not,
the day.
Andy and I were talking about just this earlier about not being able to close off. C.S. Lewis has a few paragraphs in an essay about one of the greatest things and challenges of the Christian life is waking up and keeping the wild animals at bay.
Yeah.
He says. Shutting the door and experiencing the sanctuary that is to be available to the believer. And I'm with him. For him to write that, he must have known something about that. And I feel that as well. Like there is so much trying to sweep me up and into the chore list, the production, even writing and sometimes writing the books became more, I got to get this done. And there's stuff that comes up in our lives like that, rather than the enjoyment that I had a lot of the time in the process of writing and getting it done. So, but man, that cart can get before the horse so quickly. So the distraction piece, the thoughts that we are just somewhat subject to, that's a great part of actually learning how to practice the solitude and the quiet.
We talk extensively about how every thought is not our own. So naturally, when we're trying to be intentional and slow down and be quiet and rest and connect with God, distractions are going to come. And sometimes they're, I got to get gas in the car and I got to do this and I got to do that. Other times it's, why are you even bothering to do this?
Yeah.
Stuff like that coming in.
Yeah. I wonder how you...
It can, my point in that was it can be helpful in being able to see that that's happening.
Right.
Right. Because you're
100%.
You're focused on, trying to have this quiet time or slow time with God. And here come these thoughts. You get to go, whoa, wait a minute. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
What is that?
So to be kind to your own self and say, okay, just come back. That was one of the great parts of that soaking practice that I loved was it wasn't if you drift. It's and hey, when you drift and then you notice that you drift, don't whack yourself or come under some accusation. Just come back. Just come back, and I think that is, I would say, finding the right posture for your body, the right chair, man, if it's a big, fluffy, absorbs you in chair, you might want to change chairs. You don't have to have something, thinking of Goldilocks, this one's too hard and this one's too soft, but you may need to find for the rhythms that you're after, you may need to find the right posture and the right chair, the right environment. And I think that's just part of it. I was going to say that I do better and at staying in that third gear rather than kind of caught up and hearing all the wild animals. I do better in third gear in one of two ways, and they're very different. One is speaking out loud. I feel like my thought life is way more susceptible to multiple barrages of things. But when I'm talking and I'm expressing, I'm more on a path versus the 4 or 5 lanes of the road. Does that make sense?
Well, years ago, I had a friend of mine recommend to me, and I've been recommending it ever since, that even if you don't read the Bible aloud as you're reading it, that you should play like on your phone, Audible. On the YouVersion or Audible or whatever it is, have someone reading it out loud to you.
Yeah.
Because but really the practice that you're talking about is actually verbalizing what you're hopeful for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yes, reading out loud, reading the scripture, way better than just reading in your head, because you're going to get distracted.
Yeah.
Same thing with what we're talking about, the practicing these rhythms.
Yeah.
I love it.
And
I love it. It's very helpful.
I'm as guilty as anybody, bro, in the truck, multitasking. I'm driving, I'm getting somewhere. It's one of my favorite times to talk to people and to make phone calls when I'm moving, but it's not really the best time for engagement. And I'm listening. We got that subconscious thing going on about where we're going, gas station, home, wherever that is. But
yeah.
But
I get to hear my false self come out when I'm driving sometimes because somebody's cutting me off.
That's funny.
It's
It's
funny because it's true.
When you're talking to somebody and you hear a horn. And you're you okay? So, but
we were in the truck not that long ago, and I went, look at this guy. Right in the middle of a sentence. You said it just like
like your old Connecticut voice too, and I don't think you were meaning to. It just sounded like that commercial, Boston. But one is, can you be audible in some of that, in learning a rhythm of presence, engagement, connecting. And I think the other one has been just with me for a long time, and it's writing, it's journaling.
Yeah.
I'll write out prayers. I'll write out, and the other thing that I like
it's really a quieter form of reading something out loud, writing.
Sometimes for me, it is. And sometimes the invasive thoughts, bro, really, instead, if I just write down laundry, okay, now that it's over there, I don't have to think about that.
Put it over there in that box over there. Exactly.
And I think we all kind of say, hey, hang on, I need a second.
I need to put a reminder in my phone.
Hang on 1 second. Let me get this off of me or out of me.
Yeah.
And it's so to kind of have a way to, it's not battle as much as give that thought its time, but get it somewhere where it can have its due another time.
Man, 100%.
And I think that's really helped my journaling stuff. When I get moving, and really in now the momentum of a morning rhythm or an evening rhythm, that's just different. It feels like to me not every morning's a battle. But when I start being audible or I start moving in the, I'm actually in a good place of focus, and my attention is now. I'm doing. This sounds silly. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing it, and that's the goal.
Well, it's not silly at all, because I think back to you talking about driving and multitasking. remember the days when we got in a car and all we did was drive it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of trying to, I'm going to redeem the time somehow. And I'm not saying that's always a bad thing, but you were doing the thing you were doing.
I remember
not trying to do 3 other things at the same time. And we live in that place now.
Rod and I had a Honda Accord in like 1990, early 90s. And something was a little sideways with it. And the mechanic said, well, we may need to get your Honda a new brain. And I went, because the technology, the little computers that were now in these things, all the digital stuff.
And back then, all it did was ignition timing and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's listening to you. It's like keeping track of where you're going and keeping you in the lanes.
Cameras on 5 sides and self-driving, all of that stuff. So the brain. Anyway, so I think the grace, the empowering presence of God to transform you, that definition of grace, is about the practice. It is about, hey man, you probably remember the number. I mean, if you're going to get something in your life or something out of your life, you're going to have to practice for a certain amount of days before that then becomes a way.
21.
20. I knew you'd know that.
It's 10,000 hours to become an expert in something, by the way.
And I don't mind being an amateur for all the other hours.
100%.
But it's how you practice.
It's how you become an expert.
And how you learn how to engage and inviting, I think, God into those things. So I want to just get really, really practical and say that, to be into an apprenticeship with Jesus and learning from him, ask him, be with him. If you need to put a chair, if you need to put another cup on the table, just some of the physicality even of making it more real because it's real.
Right.
But even giving yourself the opportunity, again, to not be the one even always talking, to learn how to ask questions, to learn how to engage with God, the Father, Holy Spirit, and Jesus in I talk.
And wait for an answer.
And yes, let them talk. Let them talk.
Yeah.
Because if we're on the backside of this weekend, that is really what the weekend is about. It's called the Heart of Warrior Encounter for a reason, is we want to create an environment for men to encounter God so that when they go home, that they can start practicing how to live that way. And it not be the mountain and the mountaintop and even the getaway, but can be in the day-to-day, which is kind of what we're after. So
yeah. The I like one of the questions we wrote down here too. What does the Sabbath look like for you? Feels pretty impossible, if I'm honest. It's really, really hard to shut down. And I'm not talking about Zoe work necessarily, although I oftentimes, especially around event season, get wrapped up in like, oh, this guy registered. Does he have what he needs? And, we've got talks to work on and all these things going on. So I find it pretty hard to not work. And my interpretation of work is really anything other than rest and connectedness with God.
Right.
So, we're getting our camper ready for the season right now. And I got a honey-do list on my mobile vacation home that I've got to check off, right? So Sunday is a really convenient time to do that.
Right.
So is painting the camper a violation of the Sabbath day? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess that kind of depends. Right? Can I paint the camper and be in almost the meditative state of how you get into when you're painting and be with Jesus?
Yeah.
It's really, there's a lot of gray in there when it comes to the Sabbath in terms of my practical experience with it. There's no gray as far as the scripture goes.
I hear you. I mean,
in my mind, there isn't.
No.
So it can be a point of judgment or contention
Yeah.
internally, like, what does it mean to honor the Sabbath?
Yeah. So I think that, this is what Jesus said, does man exist for the Sabbath, or does the Sabbath exist for man?
Yeah.
And I know we can go pretty rudimentary, I think, into this one place of, even God took Sunday off.
Right. And it was the seventh day of the week, so it has to be the seventh day.
But I think this for our purposes here, in the rhythms of walking with Jesus, yes, there is rest, and there is, can you be productive by literally by resting? Can that be actually what your body needs? That the designer, the manufacturer of this thing, is saying, hey, you might need a nap. Or if you're in one of those jobs that you might need to move, and part of your Sabbath or part of your rhythms and time is to somehow be active. I think where I want to go, and not away from the Sabbath, I think it's really important, but what I want to be and how I want to live is, just like I said in that soaking prayer, I want to live connected to God all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than compartmentalized into the morning,
Yep.
or into a Sunday.
Right.
What is it to either read or listen to music, or the birds are back, man. I mean,
oh, man.
It's one of Robin and I's favorite things on our back deck is these couple of diners that we opened up in pretty good sized bird feeders.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be 20 birds, moving around between these two feeders, and just to watch. Okay. So hang with me. It's good for me just to watch, to be quiet, to sit there and watch. Now, if I'm out there, they only a few brave ones, hungry ones, I guess, come. But if I get on one side of the deck, I can see I'm far enough away that they can move and do their thing, and it's good for me. Hummingbirds, we just kind of got our hummingbird feeders down, and those little suckers, I just enjoying watching them. Now, I enjoy a football game. I enjoy a basketball game. I'm not talking about that. I think something about, it was raining the other day, pretty hard. And when was the last time you watched it?
Mm-hmm.
So those are some things that I feel like are part of this idea. It's good for your soul. And when I am slower, right? We've said this. I'm trying to remember where we heard it, SJ. But when I am busy, the Father is quiet.
I think it's Dallas Willard.
Maybe. Yeah. If we don't, we can always throw it on Dallas or Lewis, C.S. Lewis.
Lewis or Tozier.
But I think. But when I am quiet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see, I hear, I feel.
Oh yeah.
And all the way back to the beginning of to reflect, right? That is, I think that's what can bring a real gift to a man's soul, because so much of a man's world, and a woman's world too, truly, so much of our world is demanding. And so to willfully kind of push that back and put yourself in a position to receive, that's really what I'm after. Just to jump to the punchline. Can I receive?
Yeah.
Can I, instead of doing and doing for, which is a part of the deal, can I be in a position to receive from God what my heart and soul needs? And I haven't found a way to do that moving and carrying on and taking care of the chores and the other things that are part of the demands, I think, of living life in this in this day-to-day space. But I think that's where I really want, if we're trying to solve for something, I would say it's not selfish. It's imperative that you solve for you.
Yeah, it occurs to me is the way you said that. In order for this to happen, in order for you to establish these rhythms, you're going to have to say no to something.
Yeah, that's really, it's simple. But, and I like that because we don't like no. We don't like to give up. We don't like to
say we can't.
All of that.
There's,
our culture.
FOMO is a thing, you know, and yeah.
So I think when we Sabbath and prayer and connecting with God, again, I thought prayer for a longest time was a submission of an order, a request for something that I'd like for you to do. Yes, there were times that prayer was like, I did it again.
Yeah.
Confession.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I think in this idea of where Paul talks about praying without ceasing, being with, he's with me, I'm with him. Ashley, my daughter, I talk about the girls sometimes, but she has on the dashboard of her car, it says, I'm pursuing and I'm being pursued.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pursuing and I'm being pursued. Search and Rescue, the first book that I got to write, that was part of that idea that we search and search and search for God, C.S. Lewis says, and then we're found. So there is a bit of activity and movement on my part, my will, but I know that as I pursue him, he's actually wooing me to do that.
Yeah.
He's wooing me to himself.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that's available all the time. But to call, we say at the weekends, how many timeouts does a man have in a day? How many in the NFL? How many's a football game?
Three per half.
Mm-hmm. Unless you lose a challenge and some of those things.
Right.
But yeah, man, what is that like to develop a practice, bring it into your rhythm?
We get as many as we want.
As many as you want.
And how often
you need a lot more than you take.
Oh, man.
You need a lot more than you take.
Take them.
Yeah.
That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
So
asking God questions. I mean, there's so many things we could put on this list of things that you can do. Man, there's great content out there. The Pause app.
Sure.
Great.
Pause app
Pause
is a
app
good
by
one.
Eldridge.
Yep.
Super good stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our the questions that we ask at the conference probably need a second coat or a third coat of paint. They just need a second.
They need to be circled back
second
to.
time of your
Yes.
attention and a third time of your attention.
Yeah.
Keep feeding, keep eating, keep enjoying what you started, because you're probably not done.
No, definitely not. I liked what you said one year. I was what we jokingly refer to as the remedial class at the Encounter
returners.
Weekend. Yeah, I came back year after year after year. And one year you said, maybe some of you guys who are alumni, you're familiar with some of these questions, but just add one word to the end of the question. Now.
Right.
Whatever the question is, Jesus, what are the parts of my heart that you need to explore, or I need to explore
where
again
I'm
with
stuck,
you.
Or where you're
whatever
where
it
you
is.
wanna,
But then you add now to the end of the
Yeah.
question. So
Yeah.
revisiting those things is a great thing.
Yeah.
And I really like, again, because we're watching The Chosen again, I mean, that scene, he's sitting at dinner often with guys, and gals too.
Yeah.
And he's just present, and they're interacting with him. And I just love that scene with Nicodemus. It's I just see them I know they're on a rooftop somewhere or wherever they are, and it's dark and all that, but can't you just see them sitting in front of Starbucks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just you hit the two of them across the table from one another. And so for quiet time or being in a rhythm, we touched on that earlier. I really like that idea of just you're in a conversation with him. It's not like, okay, here I am and, got to tell you all the things you don't know, as if there is anything you don't.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's an interaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
What questions do you have for him?
Yeah. We are, last thing.
Andy's showing the touchdown sign.
That's right.
Over here.
I don't know, because, and I can only contrast this with my first 40 years on the planet versus the last 20. I don't know another way to be loved by God than what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
By, slowing down and turning to him and turning again and again and again and again through the day.
It doesn't go well if you translate that to, let's just say, marriage. If you spent 45 minutes a day, first thing in the morning, talking to your wife and mostly asking her questions, and then didn't talk to her again till the next morning.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to go well.
Yeah. I think in these last, it's not. In the last, and that's how I lived with my relationship with God for so many years. It was a check-in, it was a dutiful, and thank you, Jesus, for for putting up with it, but to take these last years and say, yeah, bro, I think about him all the time, and talk to him a lot, and listen like I never knew I could and that was available.
Yeah.
But it took time to get to that place.
I think Jesus came up out of his chair when you had that revelation.
And
so that's what he's been waiting for.
Right. To be with him in the valleys, as well as in the discoveries, in the challenges, and also in the light, in the sun, in those are more now a part of the way I see my life in the kingdom, and we've said this many times, being a loved boy rather than trying to be a good boy has made a huge difference. I believe so. We'll see you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.